Hello, Raph. Good afternoon.
Hello. Hello, how's it
Very
going?
good, very good. Thank you. As nice as it is outside in summertime, we all want to be outside, either frolicking or, getting married. Needless to say,
Sure.
I'm pretty happy that we get an opportunity for an hour to sit down with you. Your work is absolutely outstanding, and you've got a big following as a result of your talent and the work that you do. And so we're gonna dive super deep into your technique and into your story. But before we do, I just want to thank everybody who's tuned in and who's watching this. Guys, this is an interactive event as always with our live streams. So I really want to encourage you to comment or in the chat box. We've got some moderators in there. We will have a special question and answer at the end, but questions come up if I feel they're super relevant to what Raph is talking about at that moment, then we will mention it. But we'll do our best to make sure that we get as many of your questions answered as we can. And certainly I may push a bunch of those towards the end where the question and answer is as well. And then I also want to give a big shout out, big thank you as well to Sony for sponsoring this event. Raph is a Sony shooter. Sony has been really great in partnering with us on these live events and bringing them to you guys and bringing such amazing talent to you guys, and honestly creating some of the most cutting edge technology and imaging that we see today. A world leader, and it's no surprise that their artists are also world leading artists like Raph. And so we've here at Vistek, we've always got a bunch of great deals going on with various Sony products, and we have some of the most intelligent and experienced shooters to be able to advise you. So if you guys are interested in any of the Sony products that we have here, basically all of them, then please, we've got one of our reps in the chat. We've also got a bunch of Sony reps in the chat to answer your questions, but you can also head over to vistek.ca. We've got a Sony page there that lists everything that we have. That is my housekeeping that I've done. I'm more now excited to get into this conversation. Guys, basically what this hour is going to look like is Raph and I are going to help you to get to know Raph a little bit, and then Raph's got a presentation for you all where I'm going to shut up and let him take the floor, which I'm sure is what everyone is looking forward to. But before we get into everything, Raph, for those who may not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit about the style of photography that you do, and then kind of break into what your journey was like to get to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. I guess I best describe my style as kind of a fusion. I think, as a wedding photographer, I have to be a portrait photographer, I have to be a product photographer, I have to be a photojournalist, and there's a lot of hats we have to wear as wedding photographers. So, I personally love to combine that sort of photojournalistic approach with a lot of that fashion flair. So I sometimes don't wait for moments. I help create them and then make them look a little bit more magical for my clients. So that's kind of, a brief synopsis of like the styling. I do use a lot of off-camera lighting, and I love playing with light and shaping and creating. But of course, not just photographing poses. It's more about photographing the realness of it all, but also making it look aesthetically pleasing. So.
And before we kind of get into your story there, I mean, one of the things that always fascinates me with wedding photographers specifically, and the ones like yourself that are this very high register of wedding photography, like you said, you have to be a bunch of different types of photographers in one. Yeah. It's hard enough, as I think a lot of people know, to get really cinematic shots, to control the lighting, control the exposure and the framing of a situation, to get something that you really, really like. And then it's another thing as well to go, well, I got to be ready for a real legitimate moment to happen within that. So there's a sense of like how much you can control, and then knowing that you've just got to be open to moments wherever they happen. How long did it take you to learn to be good at both of those things, to get them to work in synchronicity?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years professionally. So, and I'm still learning. I think that's the beauty of photography, that, even though weddings may seem like they're very similar, there's the getting ready, there's a first look, there's the ceremony, and all the elements are nearly identical for a lot of the weddings. It's always a different dynamic. It's a different family. It's a different group of people. And so you have to just kind of be open to anticipation, learn how to anticipate, be reactive, be proactive. at the same time. It's a bit of a I can't really put a sort of, in 2017 is when it happened, but I'm still kind of going through that, and every wedding is a new experience. But honestly, it's just practice, 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 and just being more aware, being more in tune with what's happening. And I think that will kind of allow you to get those moments for sure.
And was there sort of what I would call like an apprentissage for you, like a period of time where you worked for other wedding photographers and kind of like saw some repetition, saw the way they did things? Or did you just jump in without knowing anything and be like, I'm just going to start shooting weddings and see what happens? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, and that's kind of part of my journey, really. It almost happened by accident. I was photographing, flowers in my garden, my dog, people walking on the street, and a friend of my wife's asked, "Hey, I like your photos of your dog. Do you want to try a wedding?" And I'm like, you know what, don't expect anything, and they didn't, and I just kind of got my feet wet, so to speak. And that was my very first wedding, and that was, I wasn't even doing this, no intention of doing this professionally. This was 2008, I think, late 2008 was my very first time, and they ended up liking the photos, which, I look at them now and I'm like, we're still friends somehow after seeing all these images, but their friends ended up booking me because of that, and it kind of slowly snowballed into this sort of career that I'm currently at, and that's kind of how it started for me. But prior to that, I mean, I went to art school. I did visual arts when I was younger, and I always had that fascination of, Caravaggio and Rembrandt, and how they show depth, and there's all this moodiness to these images with a lot of shadow play and all that. So that always resonated with me. And eventually when I got into photography, which was, again, by accident, this whole thing's been an accident for me. On my honeymoon, actually, I went to Costa Rica, and we were doing, doing touristy stuff. And I ended up just taking a lot of photos and just fell in love with that medium, because I stopped doing visual arts years prior to that, and just kind of reignited this creative itch that I had, I suppose, and got a bit obsessed with websites and looking at other photographers. And I actually never I think to date, I believe I only assisted 2 other photographers twice. So I've only ever second shot twice in my career. So it's always been workshops and online learning and sort of self-taught in that sense.
I do want to say, though, that there's a theme that I see from a lot of really talented image makers, whether they're stills or motion, and which is that, like we have here in Toronto, one of our top DPs in the country for commercial work is Stuart Campbell. And Stuart Campbell started his career as an art director in agencies before he ever became a cinematographer. And he's one of the top guys because art direction is art direction. If you understand what looks good, this is something I'm a bit of a broken record on this, but if you understand what looks good, then by the time you turn your camera on, like, most of the work is done for you, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing that you went to art school, it's sort of like, okay, well, I think that highlights even more to me that by the time you had the camera, you already understood what Caravaggio was, right? You already understood what chiaroscuro was.
Yeah.
And I feel like the rest of the stuff is just sort of like filling in the blanks now, Did you feel that way, or was photography for you like this whole new world where you're like, I don't even know where to start?
Well, it kind of relates to, I always think of photography, and I mean, there's a lot of elements that go into it, but really I divide it into kind of the gear side of it, where gear is important because I think, good gear will get you to your destination faster, as opposed to you battling with your gear all the time, right? Now, it's not completely necessary all the time, but it certainly helps, and it's a good thing. But it has to be married to, pun intended, because I'm a wedding photographer, it has to be married to what's up here and sort of how you want things to look like in your head. And so once you have an idea and you're looking for something to look a certain way, it's now the technical skill and the gear that's going to help you get there. And if you see the back of your camera, or you load up the files later, and if what was up here is in the camera, then you've done your job, right? So it's the combination of those two things. And maybe there was an advantage of me kind of being in tune more with fine art painters and all that stuff prior to picking up a camera. But technically, it was a very different medium. It was very different than painting a painting or sketching on a sketch pad, so.
Right.
Yeah.
There's,
So
I mean, like the audience, I'm sure, like, I have a ton of questions, and I'm afraid that if I ask any of these questions, they're just going to be in your presentation anyways. They're going to be answered. So I think this is a great opportunity for you just to start your presentation, and
Totally.
I may chime in from time to time. But
Yeah.
otherwise, let's kick this puppy off.
Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned to you a little bit off air, I think I prepared a 3-hour presentation that I'm going to try to do in 30 to 40 minutes. But hopefully this will kind of allow people that are watching to see kind of the idea of how I progress through a wedding day, what's a thought process, and then sort of how the gear helps me achieve what I want to achieve. So now, because I don't know what's happening, people are seeing my presentation slide. Is that what's happening right now? Because I can't actually see it.
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Awesome. Cool. Okay, cool. So, I picked a really broad topic like weddings, and I combined it with another big topic like portraits, and I thought let's do a presentation about it. So, I'm a wedding photographer primarily, and I do focus as well on portraits, family portraits, individual portraits, headshots as well. So wanted to combine those two things, and we're going to touch briefly on all those as we go through. But I think, wedding photography doesn't have to be that, the fly on the wall approach. It doesn't have to be the stand upright with that 50mm lens at all times and shooting the same thing from the same angle. I think parts of the wedding day, like for example, the getting ready, give you a lot of opportunities to try something a little bit different, right? So this image that you guys are looking at here, it's become sort of a standard staple image now with the hairspray and whatnot. But you don't have to just be so literal with photography. You can there are opportunities for you to find a different angle and kind of visualize something and then execute, right? So weddings also allow us to really get into the human side of it all, right? You can be the most technical photographer, but if you can't relate, if you can't speak to people, your photos are going to be very different. I think you're going to suffer at the end of the day, especially as a wedding photographer. And so in order for our clients to allow us into their world, into them not being embarrassed by being emotional, I think is so important, and it allows you to capture really beautiful moments like this one. There's opportunities for creative stuff here, right? At weddings, I typically have about 2 to 3 hours of portrait time with the bride and groom, and you have to be in charge. You have to know what to do, and you have to be willing to try something a little bit new as well. So again, there's all these opportunities throughout the wedding day that are presented to you, and we'll kind of go through kind of my approach on each of these segments of the wedding day. And of course, the party, the flying bride. How will we get these images if you're not in there in the dance floor dancing with the people? How are you going to get in there and get up close and get those kinds of shots, right? So again, weddings are not, people think weddings are boring. I have a love and hate relationship with weddings, to be honest. There are days where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then as soon as I get there, I'm having the time of my life, and it's so fulfilling in that sense. Family photos, that's another thing too. I stayed away from family photos for years. I had no desire to photograph little kids running around until I had my own. I have a 7-year-old now, and I understand Paw Patrol. I know what Peppa Pig is. I got Peppa Pig jokes, and I can relate to the kids now. And it's become a really fun way to work with my wedding clients again, because now they're all having babies. Headshots. For me it's a very systematic kind of approach. There's a system for a studio headshot. You get that down and you repeat it, and it's a quick in and out, and clients see that on their website. That's what they want. And so we're offering headshots, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So just so you guys know, I'm based in Toronto. I've been doing this for 12 years. Again, I love off-camera lighting. If you want to get into my website and Instagram and YouTube, there's my info here. But I'm not going to go any more about myself. But here's some info if you need it. So let's get into the wedding day workflow, okay? So it all begins prior to the wedding itself, right? We need to form relationships with our clients. Wedding photography is very involved. I think, you know, it's in your best interest to really get to know your clients, get to know who they are as people and what's important to them, right? If you don't know what's important to your client, how will you know that photo of grandma, you know, that you need to get that photo of grandma, for example, right? Maybe grandma helped raise the bride for half her life. Maybe she has an amazing relationship with that person. You need to know what's important to your client. So I have a huge questionnaire. It kind of reminds me of like a university exam. It's quite involved, that I send out to my clients prior to the wedding day, and I need to know their names, of their siblings, of their parents, where we're going to be, what's the address, where do I park, and all those types of things. And that kind of information is really going to help you on the day itself, and I'll show you how. I plan out my route, travel time, and I'm always early. Okay, that's just a basic, you know, flow of prior to the wedding. So we're on the wedding day. We're getting ready. Okay, we walk in, guys. You need to say hi to everybody. You can't just walk in and be this, you know, invisible person. And when something happens, someone's gonna say, "Hey, where's the photographer?" You'd be like, "Hi, it's me. I'm right here." I say, "Hi guys, how's it going? I'm Raph. This is my assistant Simone. If we're here for you, if you need anything later on, just let us know. We're excited to be here, and let's have a good time." Right? Be in charge. Say hello. Be personable. Get a tour of the house. So many times I hear other photographers say, you know, "Oh, we're just going to work here." Okay, because this is where mom said that we're getting ready. Get a tour of the house. Figure out where the lighting is, what rooms you have, what options you have to work with, and then later be in charge. Say, "Hey guys, you know what? I think the lighting's beautiful here through this window light. I think we should do this part of the getting ready in this location." Right? Turn off lights, move furniture. I feel like I'm literally like a moving company when I arrive to these places. I move couches, I move everything I need to move to get the job done, and to make sure that I'm getting what I need to achieve, again, what's up here, so that it comes out on the back of the camera how I want it to look, right? And then look for opportunities, reflections. Again, you don't want to, like, if Uncle Bob can get these photos, you know, we're all famous Uncle Bob from all the weddings, right? The uncle that has that expensive camera. If he can get those photos, guys, you need to try harder. If your photos are the same as his, and if his are better, we really need to have an in-depth conversation, right? But that kind of approach will give you, you know, some opportunities to now here, looking at light, looking at reflection, creating depth. This is just a bride doing her earrings in the mirror. I could have faced her and just done that photo as it was, and be so literal with it, or I could now look for these different angles, right? Here, I thought, oh, these trees look really cool. I went outside of the house. I had an off-camera flash set, and we exposed so that we get a little bit of reflection in these beautiful windows, and we have her kind of peering in through the shadows there, right? So again, looking at opportunities. This is another first look photo. The groom's ready now, but we stepped outside of this really cool condo where it had these like really crazy open space, and so it feels like it's almost, I'm looking at the building next to me or in front of me, and ultimately I'm just shooting through a piece of glass here, and we're lighting him separately. And again, if we didn't look around, if we were just so literal with it, it would just be so boring, right? So again, start thinking, you know, a little bit broader. Who loves snakes? I love snakes. Right? This is the bride's pet snake. Again, I need to know what's important to her. She loves the snake, right? It's her baby. And how fun is it to get shots that are just a little bit different, right? I said, hey, stick the tongue a little bit. I saw the snake with the tongue. I thought it would be pretty fun to kind of capture them doing that. Now, guys, when we talk about ultimate trust, this is behind the scenes. We're even getting a thumbs up here. Everybody's on board with this. He actually wanted these photos, right? Like this is trust, right? But again, we're getting something a little bit different, right? We didn't have to go in there. We didn't have to do that. But what a cool spread for an album, right? It really shows sort of the rawness of the day, right? Beautiful moment between dad and the bride. Again, we're being in tune with what's happening. We're being in tune how much dad, how big of a moment this is for dad as much as it is for the bride, right? Maybe we had a chat with the dad prior to, be like, hey, you know, I can't remember his name right now, but you know, what an awesome day. Your daughter's getting ready. Are you excited? And he's like, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe this is happening. He's being so emotional. So allow them to have those opportunities, right? If we wait for moments to happen, sometimes they're just not going to happen. And you're going to come out doing a wedding and you're going to be like, yeah, that wasn't very special. You know, there's nothing really to it. You need to be a little bit more involved, right? Be more in tune. Get into that grilled cheese sandwich. Get in there. Get something a little bit different for your clients, right? So my pro tip here, guys, for this part of the wedding day, just be personal, be a human, be involved, ask questions, say hello, be friendly, make sure people know that you're there. Okay, that's really gonna drive your photos onto a different level. You're gonna get all these opportunities that you perhaps didn't have before because of this personal human connection that you're creating. And now I love walking in with my 24-70 because when I go into a wedding, getting ready location could be a hotel room, could be any, you know, it could be a house. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be a tiny room, if it's going to be a big room. But with a 24-70, I have the opportunity to get on photographing something right away if I need to, and I have that ability to be in and out until I get settled, until everybody is sort of settled, right? And then I switch my lenses as I need. As we have that hour to 2 hours of getting ready, I'll move into my primes, and I usually stick to, you know, a shorter focal length because I usually don't have very big spaces to work with. So the gear that I use mostly for that part of the day, I'm using my A7 IIIs, my 24-70 to kind of get a sense of the space. And then I move down through my primes, 35, 55, and 85. And I use my lights. Obviously, I use Profoto. Okay, so that's kind of the gear part of it. So I hope that was helpful. And we're kind of going to go through the different parts of the day to kind of give you sort of my approach on that. Any kind of questions or anything should I break or anything like that?
No, I think we're good so far.
Okay,
so yeah,
perfect.
keep going. I do have one sort of quick question actually about that. So I see you're running the A7 III.
Yeah.
Presumably, as every, you know, competent wedding photographer I've seen, you have two cameras, right? Because
100%.
Because you need to have one lens on one and one on the other, right? So you're running both two A7 IIIs or?
So not necessarily. When I have two cameras because of backup. So I definitely need. I don't go anywhere without a backup. So I mean, I'm a professional photographer. I can't risk something breaking and saying sorry to my client. So certainly have a backup. My assistant will always carry a camera as well. So my assistant will have a secondary camera, but they're usually utilized for lighting, holding reflectors, or grabbing me lenses. So when they're not being utilized, they'll grab another camera and kind of get other angles and things like that. But ultimately, I'm shooting with one camera at a time. I used to do the double holster thing, you know, but it just wasn't. It was just too much. I just needed to focus on what was happening in front of me. Again, creating those, seeing those opportunities, and not sort of worrying about which camera, what lens, and all that. So
right. So yeah, I didn't even think about that. That yeah, you'd be screwed if you had a camera go down in the middle of a wedding. Obviously, not a great start to the day. No. I'm going to let you keep going. This is fantastic.
Cool. So first look, if you're not familiar with weddings, or, you know, if you haven't done them, first look or a reveal is when the bride and groom see each other for the first time. This is usually done in private or maybe around family, usually in any type of location. It usually happens prior to the ceremony, so they have, you know, get the nerves out of the way and the excitement is in the air. It's a beautiful time. I've loved photographing them because it really comes, the emotions really come through. And again, not all the times. I've had weddings where, you know, they high five each other and like, okay, now what? Sometimes they're bawling their eyes out, and you know, you get all kinds, and it's a lot of fun. But when I approach these situations, I'm analyzing light and location, and again, that's kind of my go-to. I want to walk in there and I want to see what lighting I'm working with, and I have this method that I share, you know, and we kind of dive deeper into it in my workshops. But I use my hand and I kind of gauge where the light is coming from and where should I pose someone, or where should I have the groom standing so that when he turns around he's in good light, and so on, we're able to get the expressions. And I try to use natural light as much as possible. It's a really cool, intimate moment. A lot of the time, I don't want to be blasting them with light, right? But what we're able to do is really get into that human side, that vulnerability a little bit, that uncontrollable emotion. So being able to be there and photograph those types of reactions is just so heartwarming and awesome. I really love photographing these. And you can kind of see different people reacting a little bit different in different ways, as we kind of go through these. But you can see one common thing, right? I'm shooting them. I'm not shooting where they are. It ultimately, to me, doesn't matter. It's not a scenic. It's not an environmental portrait. It's emotion, emotion, emotion at this point, right? So we're after that emotional element of these photos, right? This was hilarious. This was the groom's brother who played a joke, got into a wedding dress, and ended up doing a prank first look. So I love the groom's reaction. He's just like, he can't believe what's going on, which was hilarious and a lot of fun to photograph. But ultimately here, guys, I'm using, I recommend that you use a long lens, 7200, 2.8. G Master is my go-to, or my new favorite, the 135 1.8. So if you need to kind of stand in one place and not move too much, 135 is great because you get that at 1.8 or at f2, you get that beautiful fall off. That bokeh is just amazing in the back, and you're really able to concentrate all that focus on the emotion that's happening in front of you. 7200 is great if you have a little bit of zoomability, or if you're in a really tight spot and you need to adjust. That's really an awesome lens for that. And again, it's about capturing emotion, right? Not the scenic view. So just remember that. First looks are all about emotion. So what I use again, 7200, 135, and sometimes I'll use the 185, very rarely, but if we're in a tight space, or if we're in a hotel room or something like that, or a hotel lobby, I'll go to a focal length that's a bit shorter. But I like to be on the long end of this spectrum here. So wedding day creative time, I call that portrait time, just you and the bride and groom, or wedding party. Again, my process is very similar, right? I'm looking at light location. I'm looking for pockets of light, little things filtering through, interesting locations, existing lights, so things like wall sconces or other lights that are not natural, but they exist. And of course, looking for reflections and different opportunities. So again, it's really more than just standing there, in one spot and holding the camera right here. Remember, your cameras, my Sony has this amazing ability to have a tilt LCD in the back, right? So I can put my camera up here and still see what I'm doing. I can put it down on the ground and still see what I'm doing. And we're spoiled now with mirrorless cameras and the technology that's available to us, but I don't think enough of us actually use it to our advantage to just do something a little bit different. Right, so here's a behind the scenes shot. I'll show you guys. It's a clip of a video. I'm not gonna do the whole video, but I'm posing them in the car. There's an old Rolls Royce here. I have the flash that I wedged between the seats, and I'm just kind of directing them kind of what to do and then how I need them to pose. And then I take a step back. This is with a 24-70, and we have something like this that comes out, right, which is really cool. We underexpose the sky. We put a little bit of light on them. And again, it's a really beautiful wall art piece for your clients. It's a beautiful spread in the album, maybe something to conclude their day, And so again, just thinking about not the obvious and trying to find those opportunities. So this was behind the scenes of the shot that I showed you guys initially, and basically what this was, it was a screen that came down. If you think of like a projector screen in this venue, it had these wall dividers that were kind of transparent. You can kind of see shadows and a little bit of shadow play on there. So I thought, what would be really cool if we got all the wedding party together, and I put a light behind them, so that way I get really evident shadows, right, or silhouettes of theirs, and then I light the couple separately. And basically we ended up with that, right? So I'm always trying to find just interesting things that I can do on venues, and this really comes down to again, practice. You have to do this. This is 12 years now of doing this, and again, it's kind of seeing the same things play out and saying to myself, how can I do this differently? How can I approach this from a different perspective? And even challenging yourself to the point where you've now photographed the same venue for the third or fourth or sixth time, and you're like, oh, I always do this shot here. Well, what can I do now that's a little bit different? Where can I take them that I haven't taken them before in this venue, right? So that always has to be in play, you know, when you're photographing weddings. Here's an example. We're using a 14 to 24 here. It's a really wide angle lens, and we're basically using a little bit of the long veil to create a shot, and we keep them centered because there's a lot of distortion on the outside of the edges there, and so we want to keep them in the center. We light them, and we have again an interesting portrait. Okay, here we are on this is Polson Pier downtown. So we have the skyline in the back, sun setting, and again, using light, using a really wide angle lens. This is 16. We create something a little bit different, a little bit more magical, a little bit, and what's really cool too is showing this to the clients at the back of the camera, and because they always think these types of images, it's all Photoshop, right? And so when you're able to, if you ever want to boost your confidence in your clients, this is one way to do it. You show them the back of the camera, and of course you have to be sure that the shot is great, but show them the back of the camera, and automatically that trust and comfort is going to skyrocket, and they'll say, hey, you want me to do a backflip and whatever, you just tell me and I'm going to do it, because they know it's going to be worth it. So here we're walking by, wall sconces, and I usually, years ago I would have just walked by this and be like, this is terrible. What am I going to do? This is so dark in here. But now I'm seeing opportunities, right? I'm walking by, I'm like, these are two little light things. I think that could be kind of cool. Maybe a little moody black and white. And again, we can kind of play in there, right? And just again, do something a little bit more interesting. And again, this kind of reminds me again back to my old, art days with very dramatic-y kind of paintings, So here, for example, we're utilizing a lot of backlight. We're really overexposing this shot. They're just doing a little nose snuggle, if you want to call it that, and we're again creating something a little bit romantic, very airy, very mysterious, but a lot of fun, right? So don't be afraid to play. Changing your angle, like I already talked about, holding your camera up high, holding it low, crouching down, finding a bush and hiding behind it. All those things have to happen. Otherwise, your work can get very, very stale, especially on a wedding day where, again, every weekend in and out is the same thing, right? They're getting ready, doing a first look. And there's portraits, and there's the wedding party, and then it sounds so boring, right? So you have to make it interesting. And again, you have to always think of it too from the client's perspective. Well, this isn't their fourth wedding this month. This is their very first one, right? And so you have to take that approach too. That you have to make it creative for yourself, but also for them. So here on the right, I thought there's this really cool kind of garden in this little atrium here. So I went all the way up to the highest floor there and shot down at them and got them to kind of walk through it. And I think it's a pretty fun shot with the leg kind of coming out and as they're walking together, taking their first steps. If you want to get symbolic, taking the first steps as a married couple and so on, which is quite fun to do. All right, and you got to make it fun, guys. Sometimes this could be a very long process. Sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, I want to ask a question because we actually did get a question from the audience, and it was one that was sort of on my mind a little bit. What I really love about what makes your work so stylized is your control of artificial light. Even though I know a lot of times you want to work with natural light, and it's the quicker, easier thing to do. But just
Sure.
the command that you have at a moment's notice to be able to use your strobes. And we did have a question from Tom who asked, I guess that you work with ProPhoto, and he wants to know a little bit about your ProPhoto setup. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. I'll share I'll share my lighting, all my lighting equipment later on. But in a nutshell, I mean, it is quite simple, but it has taken years to kind of figure out what I wanted. And so ProPhoto does everything that I need for me. It's obviously a premium brand, but so for getting ready in sort of small spaces, I like to use the A1 or the A1X or the A10 now currently. That's my go-to. It's small, it's portable, it's just enough power for hotel rooms and things like that. So that, I usually stack a lot of grids together to really focus my beam. Usually comes out at about a 77-degree angle or so. I want to have that control of it not spilling all over the place. So grids are my number one accessory or modifier for lights. I just love the control that they give me, and I can really pinpoint where I want that light. So I mean that's sort of my basic setup for getting ready. For outside, it's a little bit different. I'm using a more powerful light, usually a B10 plus, and for that I'm either using I'll use a Magmod mag box that I have, or I'll be using a Profoto Magnum reflector, which gives me a lot of hard light, but it's still controlled. It's still zoomable. I can still control the depth of that, and it actually amplifies my flash too. So on a really bright sunny day, where it's noon and I'm battling that harsh open sun, it does create hard light, but I'm not afraid of hard light. I think it's a good thing a lot of the time, and I'll use that. So I know it's a little bit brief. I know it's not a lighting seminar, so I don't want to get too into it. But basically the A10 and the B10 Plus are my go-to, and then Profoto's got hundreds of modifiers that kind of to taste. It's like soup. How much salt do you want? To taste. You can choose your own modifiers, right?
Amazing. All right, I'm going to let you keep going. I'm going to switch back to your screen.
No worries. So my pro tip for the creative time, guys, is make it fun. I mean, that could be a 2 or 3 hour portrait session, and you don't want to put your clients through a marathon. You don't want to just suck the energy out of the day for them, because they still have either a ceremony or a reception to get to. You want to make this a lot of fun. And one tip I would give you too that's not on here is it goes back to the very first tip of getting to know your clients. What if your clients are architects and they love architecture, they love the city life, city architecture, and you're like, well, we're going to go to this park on your wedding day, and you're going to stand next to random trees because I think they're pretty. Are you doing your clients a service, right? I would argue that you're not. And so getting to know your clients, getting to know what they're into, getting to know what they're aesthetically like as well is very important, because then you can really cater that portrait session to them. And again, it then relates back to you selling more album pages for them. Maybe they're going to buy a beautiful piece of wall art now because you've now included this beautiful architecture that they really like. So it kind of goes back to that. Finding different vantage points, we already talked about that. Don't just stand in one spot like Uncle Bob with that camera. Move around, up, down, sideways, anywhere you need, right? And then various lenses here. I mean, Sony's got such a crazy collection of lenses that basically, from 16 to 200, you're set, So again, different lenses will give you different looks. And so here, it's hard for me to, kind of pinpoint my two favorite or what do you usually shoot with? It's that standard, 35-85 combo or 24-70 to 70-200. Those are sort of the two answers I always give people, but it really varies, right, on the situation. So again, I have a huge bag that I bring. That's why I have an assistant, because I bring like 9 lenses with me. I mean, some photographers show up with 2 lenses. I'll show up with 9, but at least I have now everything I need and able to again, kind of go back to what's in my head. How do I technically can get that done? What equipment do I need to make that happen? And again, it all works together to create your final image, right? So here, A7, I put A7R3, but I use the A7 III. And again, all the lenses, right? 16 to 200 and Profoto for my lights. Okay, family photos. We're going to not switch gears in terms of family photos, but this is formal family photos during the wedding day. Again, I like to again analyze my lighting and location. These are not going to be the creative photos of the day. These are going to be the standard, groupings of people. I like to find one spot that accommodates the biggest group, and basically stay there for that entire time. I usually get a list from my clients because I don't know their families, I don't know their dynamic, and then I say, guys, group 1, these people here. Group 2, these people there. Group 3, these people there. And so I just read off a list and we just bang these out, and we're good to go, right? So I look for even natural light if I can find it, and if not, I'll use my B10 Plus and a shallow umbrella, usually a white shallow umbrella, nice and center. I'm not getting all fancy with my shadows. No one wants to, I've done the mistake of putting it at a 45 and then the person next to each other is casting shadow on the next person. Total disaster. Keep it simple for this part. Very flat light. Everybody wants to look good and get these done, right? And then, it's just standard family photos. There's nothing, we're not winning awards here. These are just family photos that, grandma's going to want, that they're going to want, maybe on an 8x10, that mom's going to want to put up on the fridge or on the bookshelf. There's nothing crazy about it. Just get them together, get them smiling, get them looking at the camera. I mean, I even got that little kid to smile. That's where my Peppa Pig jokes come into play, I think. So I get that going for me. And then we get these goofball guys too. Sometimes, they're really fun to photograph these guys, right? So I like to use a long lens when possible for these. If I can use a 7200 for family portraits, that'd be awesome. I oftentimes don't have the space to do that, to accommodate, a group of 8, a group of 10. So I'll have to kind of resort back to a 24-70 where I can. But I like to keep the lighting super flat, very simple. And again, get the list of the groupings for my clients. It's going to make your life so much easier. And again, earlier on in my career, as I was learning the ropes here, we would try to do this on the wedding day. And then not only did we miss a bunch of people thought they left to the bar already, but now they're needed for another photo. And it was a constant disaster, right? If you kind of have a list, if you're ready, it's quick and painless for everybody, and you're good to go. Gear, again, 7200, 24-70, all right? And reception, again, I go in there, I analyze my light, I talk to the DJ, I talk to the lighting guy, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys going to be doing for the first dance? What are you guys going to be doing for the first, for the entrance? Is there going to be spotlights? Is it going to be dark? Talk to me. Get on the same page, right? And then here it's, again, not a lighting talk. So, there's different lighting that we use for different scenarios. We'll have a lot of kickers on corners of the room for dancing. We'll have a spotlight with a grid during reception, things like that. It's quite complicated to get into this in detail now, but give you some idea of, just using a backlight and an on-camera flash. This was in the middle of the night. It was pitch black. So we were able to at least, they're like, oh, we're going to do this outside now. Like, okay. So, you need to be prepared and ready, right, with the right gear. This guy's doing the worm, pretty awesome at doing the worm. So we got a little bit of a kicker with a blue gel in the back and an on-camera flash to give him some light. Again, a couple of kickers, and there's a lot of lights here that were used that the venue had, which helped us out, give us a lot of depth. And that was a lot of fun, getting in there with that, super wide angle lens to the point where the bride, I think, almost knocked the camera out with her hand because we were so close. But you got to get in there, you got to be part of the action, right? And then simple things like that, 7200, just during speeches, reacting, bouncing light off the wall, not off the ceiling, but off the wall, because then it gives you more direction, right? And then more of a creative lighting, 2-light scenario, just as they're taking a break between dessert. From a different vantage point. So that's where all these things kind of come together. Just a podium shot, again, a grid with a light on there, and that's probably with an 85. So here, move around, don't get lazy. There's a lot of things going on during reception. Get on top of it. Get off your butt. And of course, different lenses, right, for different looks. And then for dancing, I'll use usually 24 or a 35. I want to get in there. I want to be right in that action, right? And for speeches, we usually use 7200. I'll even use a monopod. By that time, my arm is probably ready to fall off after 12 hours. So I'll just stand there in the middle of the floor with a monopod with a 72-200, and that will give me all I need for speeches. All right. So that's the end of wedding stuff. We're going to quickly go through how much. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go super quick through family and headshots real quick, and then we can wrap it up. Does that sound good?
Sorry, I had my microphone off, so you don't hear me drinking my water. Yes, that is good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. So family photos. Oh man. So like I said, I didn't want to touch these for a while until I had my own kid, and again, I can relate to the kids, and I see the importance, and it's really nice to work with wedding clients as well. That were your wedding clients maybe 5-6 years ago. So I love to discuss what they want to get out of the shoot. Why is this important to them? Why are we doing these families? What is it that you want to capture? And just kind of get a sense of how they want this to look and what the feel and the purpose of this is, right? And again, when we get there, it's all lighting and location, right? And we're going to use different lenses for different looks. Again, same idea. We're going to take some of the things we talked about and kind of put it together here, right? You can still do creative family photos. This is 3 kids and a mom and dad. It doesn't have to be a standard shot of them standing by a tree and you know, just smiling at the camera. It could be done a little bit differently, right? Using backlight, just having them walk, the little girl getting her attention, talking about Peppa Pig again or something. You know, you can get kind of, you know, interesting atmospheric or environmental portraits. Two brothers hanging out, 135 lens, a little flash, and a nice little smile to the camera, right? Found a really cool wall. They had matching shirts on. They're goofing around. Dad's sticking his tongue out, having a good time. Nice composition, and we're getting somewhere, right? So again, you need to be personable. This whole thing, it's a very human experience here, right? You need to be personable. You need to connect with the kids. Now that was my biggest struggle too until I had my own, but connecting with the kids is amazing. And you know, I like to start with a long lens. Imagine me showing up, you don't know who I am, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Here's a camera on your face. It's really not going to work out well for you. I would highly recommend you start with 7200, 135, and kind of move as your session progresses, moving closer, and end up with maybe with a 35 or a 24. And that would be my recommendation. And for family photos, I like to use a lot of backlight. I don't, you know, there's a lot of more moving components here. Kids run around really quick. In order to an assistant to really follow them along the entire time with a light is not the best thing. So using backlight's nice because you get, you know, the shadows off the face and you have a lot more control. And so I'll use the 85, 135 maybe to start with. I'll go to 35 later on for wide angle shots, and then of course my lights when I need them. Okay, and then headshots. So again, we moved from weddings to not moved from weddings, but added our family and headshots, especially during the pandemic when weddings were almost non-existent. So I've been doing these for years, but haven't really pushed them or even had anything on my website for these for families or headshots, but I've done them over the years. And I think headshots for me are it's a very system-based approach. You develop your lighting, your look. You get consistent with that look. You put that on your website. Clients say, hey, I like this guy's headshots. I want that. And then they come to you and you deliver that consistently. I think it's a really quick and painless process. And if you develop a system, you just repeat it. And that's the way I like to look. You're not reinventing the wheel here. You know, these isn't creative portraits. This is just headshots for businesses usually, right? So discuss the reason for the headshots. It could be for a header for a website. So then you need to know that you need to leave a little bit more negative space, perhaps, and so on, right? So find out the reasons. And just stick to a consistent look, and I think they'll be successful. So again, my headshots are pretty. They're just, I don't know, I consider them just standard headshots, right? But they're consistent. We have there's a certain look that we kind of have across the board, and some subtleties and stuff. And then we do on location as well too. So if someone wants to do headshots on location, we basically apply that same systematic approach where we have a big reflector, a large light source, we position them in a certain way, and we just repeat that for different clients, right? But again, be personable, small talk, music. I asked them, what's your favorite, music when they come to the studio for the headshots. Get them warmed up, talk about the weather, whatever. This is someone coming to you that doesn't know you, you don't know them. And so, I had one lady come in once, or I went to a studio or an office building, and I did a headshots of the 12 people, and one lady came in and she was white as a ghost, and I was legitimately concerned for her well-being, and I'm like, do you need a water? Do you need to sit down? She's like, I just rather be getting a root canal done right now than having my photo taken. And it was that, it was a kind of a light bulb moment for me that this is sometimes how people feel about having their photo taken. So being personable and engaging is certainly a good thing. I highly recommend it. Being efficient, lawyers don't have 2 hours for you to try different things. They want to be in and out, 10, 15 minutes. They want to get their LinkedIn shot, and they want to be out of here. So be efficient and be consistent, and I think you'll do well. For my headshots, I use the most amazing lens ever, the 100 STF 2.8 from Sony. It is an incredible lens. It is tack sharp. It is the perfect focal length, I think, for headshots. And I'll either use my S7R4 for this one to get a crazy, megapixels in resolution. If it's especially more of a commercial application, and of course my lighting setup I have specific to that. But that's basically it. And then for portraits, and creative stuff, I mean, it's a combination of everything we talked about. These were done at Profusion a couple of years ago, 2019. We're using all these things that we're talking about. We'll get to know the models before we photograph them. We get some creative direction in terms of what kind of vibe we're going for. What are we doing these in black and white? Are we doing these in color? When we're just outside and playing, there has to be a bit of a theme going, right? So again, everything we talked about relates to sort of this creative portraiture type. You're trying out a new lens with a model. There has to be a wardrobe that has to get decided on. There has to be that personal connection. This was at Profusion, I think 2019, 20, at the Sony booth. Again, when we're using all these elements that we talked about. So it's a lot of talking. Just a little shameless plug. I do run a lighting workshop called Afraid of the Light Workshop. If you guys want to check it out, it's just afraidofthelightworkshop.com. And obviously with COVID, we haven't been running it, but hopefully things open up and we will. So if you want more info, check that out. Here's incredible. A list of all my gear.
Oh, you got? I went off that just to start talking, but I'm going to go back to that.
No problem.
Let's see your gear. Let's see your gear. All right.
Yeah. So my gears. So these are all my lenses. I think I mentioned all of them before. So again, I got three zooms that I like to use: the 16 and 35, 24 to 70, and 7200. These are all Sonys. And then I have my primes: 24, 35, 55, 85, and 100, and the 135. So as you can see, I'm pretty set with kind of what is up here and what gear will help me get there. I've obviously invested a lot in these, and I love these lenses. So that's basically what I use for cameras and lenses. A7 3s, I have 2 of those, and an A7R4. And lighting gear, my Profoto B10 Plus, the A1 X, A10, and a bunch of light shaping tools as well. But again, we can skip past that. So thank you so much. It's been awesome. I hope there's some questions, and I'll leave this up if anybody wants to connect with me.
Awesome. Thanks, Raph. Yeah, a bunch of questions. The first thing that I want to ask you is, you talked about working with kids and that whole I've got my Peppa Pig routine worked out, get them laughing.
Yeah.
But I know one of the challenges for both portrait, wedding, or even fashion editorial photographers, anybody who deals with humans, is to get humans to react in a way that doesn't feel forced. And that's either working with professional models maybe,
Right.
but also people that have never been photographed before, like your anecdote of the lady who was just absolutely mortified to be photographed. So,
Yeah.
there's part of it is making them feel comfortable, which is our job.
Sure.
But what are some of the things that you do to get people to sort of react or move and bring some life to the frame that's not just stand there and look that way, what kind of things do you say to them, do with them?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, it's really depends on the circumstance. I don't have any one-liners that I use. I mean, occasionally there's one I remember from Peter Hurley. He's had a whole, his personality is just so interesting and really, really fun. So he's got this one that I always use especially for business people, because they tend to be a bit more serious. And I'm like, your best impression of an asparagus, go. And they're like, what? And it just gets them off the tight jaw and whatever, and it just breaks up the whole thing. They have no clue what I'm talking about. They've never heard anybody say that in their life, and and I got that from Peter, and that's been a really good one, just to break up the really big tension. Sometimes I just say, guys, just literally just do this, and that, as simple as that is, it's so effective that the muscles relax, the things loosen up a little bit. And then we just talk. And a lot of times I'm like, it's just a lighting test, guys. I'm just checking the light. Don't worry about anything, whatever, so there's nothing really specific that I have. It's kind of very based on the situation. Sometimes it's about just capturing the moments between moments, right? Yeah. So if you say something to, if you have a father of the bride waiting outside, about to see his daughter in the dress for the first time, you can talk to the dad and be like, hey, so, how you feeling about this? I can't believe this is like, your little girl's getting married. This is so crazy. Have you been, how have you been feeling, And just kind of having that conversation and be like, okay, listen, we're going to let you in, but, just hang out tight and leave him by the door a little bit and kind of have him kind of stand on standby, and you build that anticipation a little bit, things like that. And again, it just depends on the situation. But that's kind of part of our job. I think, as photographers, it's more than just clicking the button. And sometimes it's tough. Sometimes you just can't, get through. Yeah. And sometimes you can, right? There's wins and losses for sure.
Yeah, exactly. We got a great question from Corey H. Corey wants to know, when you have your A7 III and the R4, how do you go about deciding which camera you're going to use for what shot? Because it's two wildly different resolutions and potentially different speeds. How do you make that decision between the two?
Yeah, I kind of look at what my end product is going to be. So what I typically, for weddings, I'm not really printing anything larger than a 24 by 36 or maybe a 40-inch acrylic or something like that. So the resolution on that camera is more than enough to be able to work with. And so that's my main go-to. The reason why I got the E7R4 is more for commercial purposes, for really being able to crop down as well. And so that's really the only reason. So I would look at your end product. What is that end product? And then maybe make the decision on do you need that resolution or not. Now with new cameras coming out, with hard drives getting with storage space getting hopefully less expensive, it's not maybe that much of a concern anymore. I know when the first few cameras came out that were 40 something megapixels, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I only have a 64 gig card in my camera. How long is that gonna last, right? So I think with time it's all gonna be 100 less anyway. Yeah. But that's kind of how I went about deciding.
Yeah. Oftentimes too, with like larger resolutions, we have, if you're doing any skin retouching or anything like that, you have a little bit more information to work with to make the skin retouching seem a little bit more natural. But that leads me to think, like, in your post-production process, something you didn't really touch on, but you're doing lots of weddings, lots of portraits a year. Skin retouching is not like the fastest thing in the world to do, even if you're really, really good at it, if you've got a lot of images to process. So what's your process once the wedding's shot and it's done? What's that process look like for you, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so I work with a company that does color correction for me. So I just basically I give them the files, they give me back color corrected images based on sort of my own preferences I've worked at with them prior to, and so they know kind of my style, how much contrast, all that kind of stuff. And then skin retouching we only do on album or any kind of printed products. We're not going to skin retouch 1,000 images. We'd be out of business at that point. So it's a very simple problem. I'm not doing any frequency separation stuff. I'm not again, it's not commercial work. So I'm very just a brush in Lightroom to remove anything that's very obvious, or a clone tool to remove blemish or something like that. That's as deep as we go. Right. with the retouching. Yeah.
Right. And because you've specialized, so much into doing wedding work and stuff, but visit your webpage or visit your Instagram page, and you see that obviously you do a whole lot more as well, right? I mean, again, we talked about the headshots and the portraits and things like that. I'm always curious, and I always ask wedding photographers this, that because of the environment that you're working in, because of the pressure of it, and because you see patterns and you get to really meet people, has there any experience from the wedding world that you've taken into your portrait world that you're like, oh, I would not have known to do this if it wasn't for my experience in weddings, even though you're not even shooting anything that's at all close to a wedding? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really interesting question. I never really thought about that. I can say that, for example, I think just doing weddings regularly has certainly helped shape who I am as a photographer. You know, I'm not really, you know, like the most extroverted person, but it certainly helped me to be able to just walk into a room and say, hey, how's it going? And just kind of be in the space and kind of own the space when I need to. So it certainly helped with that. And that kind of translates to you know, business headshots. And if there's an executive and you can still have that confidence and know that, you know, that you're going to do a job for them and whatnot. But, you know, I think it's also helped me get a really, well, a better understanding of lighting. Because I've certainly come back from weddings and be like, oh, you know, yes, we were rushed, but I wish I would have so-and-so, you know, done it this way or that way. And so that has, you know, it's all kind of added to sort of the learning experience for me. But I know it's a kind of a broad answer, but yeah, there's like, I can't think of a specific thing, but those are some of them.
Awesome. Sure. I have one last question before we wrap it up, which is, you know, so many of your images, dude, are like some of the best wedding photography I've ever seen. Like, it's just really, really incredible. And oftentimes when I talk to similar photographers who work in other realms, a lot of what allows them to do the shots they do is they pre-conceptualize and a lot of, you know, research and like, you know, boards that they put up and things like that, style guides. But for you, like I would imagine, you know, like a lot of, you know, I'm looking at that, you know, that backlit one that you did, you know, with that screen, you know, that's something, unless you were in that location, you know, well in advance and were playing around, you know, that's something you would have had to just decide on in the moment. So my question to you is like, how much do you do research before going into a wedding? Like, how much do you follow other wedding photographers? How much do you get inspired? Like, where does this inspiration come from to get these ideas from? Or are they just so completely organic at the moment, you know?
Well, I think there's a, you know, a level of indirect inspiration where just, you know, my colleagues, there's some amazing photographers in, you know, in Canada, you know, Two-Man Studio, Sean LeBlanc, for example, you know, those are all really great photographers that, you know, when I see their work, I'm like, oh, that's so cool how they did that. And, you know, and perhaps that kind of rubs off as well, right? I mean, Jerry Gionis has been a huge inspiration for me and a mentor. And I did his workshop in 2012, I think, and it changed a lot of things for me in how to see light and all that. So he's been a huge influence on me as well. And obviously some of, you know, Avedon and all these, you know, the classic, the masters, right? And you know, they kind of rub off here and there on you as well. But in terms of prep, I've literally just been my personality for a long time, even through university and stuff. If there's something due on Friday, I would start it on Thursday. And I would be spontaneous with it. and I think that's when I did my best work. And so when I walk into a location, I'm in that location at that moment, and that's when the ideas come. I actually never pre-scout locations because I used to get really disappointed. I would get into a location, let's say in June at 4 o'clock, but the wedding was in September at 5 o'clock. And the lighting is completely different. And, you know, at those times of year, or it was sunny on the one day and it's cloudy on that day. And now that really cool filtering light that I saw when I went there is no longer there, right? So it becomes a little bit disappointing. And so I just learned to kind of work on the spot, and that's just been how I like to function.
Awesome. As the audience can see, Raph, we have lost your video feed.
Yes, I just saw that right now. Let me see if I can.
But yeah, you may have lost some battery life there, or who knows. But it came at an okay time. Let's see what happens here. So at least you can give us the
I
final,
got a backup.
the final salute goodbye here. While Raph searches for his backup cam, Always have a backup camera.
That's right.
I want to sincerely thank, just first off, thank everyone who's tuned in to watch. There he is. Thanks for tuning in for this hour. We super appreciate you coming aboard, and thanks to Sony as well for being a huge part of what makes these happen. And Raph, thank you for making the time. We super appreciate it. It was super insightful. I always love these because I love to see this, step-by-step process that artists go through, and I think that everyone who watches can take a little bit of that and place it into their workflow process as well. So super insightful. Thank you so much, and hopefully we're going to see you around. And I hope you have a great year. Despite the pandemic, shooting as many weddings as you can.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a really fun time. Thank you for having me, and thanks both to Vistek and Sony and to you as well. So thanks again.
Thanks, Raph.